Let's get back to some of the big stories here in Canberra this afternoon. Our panel of political strategists, Bruce Hawker and Grahame Morris, join us. Thank you both very much for your time. We all love a good political ad. I want to get your thoughts as people who've been involved in this process for many years. I don't know if we need to show the attack ad on Malcolm Turnbull again. We've seen it plenty of times today, making the point that the company tax cut is going to benefit him because, well, you know, he's got a lot of investments in big companies. Grahame, let me go to you first on this one. Look, personal attack ads, we've seen plenty of them. What did you make of this one, though?
Well, I like negative ads.
There you go.
If they're done well. I think this one would have played really well in the Labor campaign office and in the Labor caucus and in Mr Shorten's seat of Keilor and Essendon and Moonee Ponds. You know, it's that sort of an ad that it cements the base. And in that sense, it's okay. But the whole attack in the last few weeks, what it's tended to do is fire up Malcolm Turnbull. You know, in the Parliament, he's actually grown another leg. You think, look, I do like negative ads, and you think, well, what would be an equivalent for Mr Shorten, say? And, you know, I think he'd go on trust. And you'd have what's he famous for? And you'd have a picture of him sort of in Tasmania where the miners were digging underground trying to save their fellow miners.
Beaconsfield?
And at Beaconsfield, and Mr Shorten was there. And you'd had something like, look, here's Mr Shorten, while he made his name on the back of miners. When the media was there, Mr Shorten was there. When the media went away, Mr Shorten went away, but he made his name on the back of miners, but now he's turned his back on miners and wants to close down mines all over Australia. Do you trust him?
Well, there you go. Some
free ad. It's not about that, actually.
Free script for the Liberal Party. But Bruce, I mean, you've made the case over the years too for attack ads, negative ads. They do work. That's the reality. Do you think this is a good move from the Labor Party?
Well, I suspect that it's targeted at seats like Longman and Braddon, actually, and they can be quite effective. You know, we can all be very censorious about it and say, well, this is all poor form. But negative advertising actually generally works, particularly when it's based in fact, and there is a factual basis for the ad, so it can't be criticised on that basis. Could I just say one other thing about it? I think the Prime Minister needs to be a bit careful about where he starts throwing stones, because I read an article today that was penned by him. It was an opinion piece in the Weekend Australian in 2009, where he came out of the corner and just started swinging at Kevin Rudd for the fact that his wife was a successful businesswoman. And this is what he said. I'll read you the last paragraph of what he said. And he's talking about Kevin Rudd here, OK? But what are we to think of the wealthiest Prime Minister Australia has ever had? A man greatly enriched by the privatisation and outsourcing of government services, standing up again and again to denounce the very policies for which he and his family have profited so extensively. And that's a direct quote from the article that the now Prime Minister, who I think is wealthier than Kevin Rudd, by the way, wrote about Kevin Rudd in 2009. He's taken a direct swipe at him. From time to time, politicians and political parties attack each other. And Kevin Rudd was fair game for him back in 2009, and it was followed up by other ministers who attacked him.
And his personal family wealth. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah. That's a good point. And look, just a little walk down memory lane in terms of attack ads. We all remember this one.
Wish me luck as you wave me goodbye. Cheerio, here I go on my way.
Good luck.
Yeah, that was the very self-float Latham one. And that worked quite a treat. Don't forget, Latham was doing really well in that campaign, wasn't he? Until towards the end, the last 2 or 3 weeks really fell off. And that sort of, look, it makes the point, doesn't it? The negative advertising works. We've got another one here as well.
I didn't say go get a job. I didn't say go get a job.
Imagine another another 3 years of it.
Go and get a job. Grahame Morris, did that one do the trick?
I liked that one at the time. Look, it just exemplified the sort of arrogance that was the feeling that was around about Paul Keating at that time. You know,
You got
the
to tap
flash
in,
clocks.
you're trying to tap into, you know, clearly your research is showing is a negative sentiment. You know, and with Turnbull, I suppose, is it that he's out of touch? Is that what they're going for?
Well, that's what they're trying to do, is to say he's out of touch. But gee, if I were Malcolm, I would come back and say, hey,
The trust thing.
well, certainly the trust thing on the other side, but on his side, hang on, you know, I'm the product of you know, essentially a dad who brought me up. And yeah, Lucy and I have done all right. But we sort of went through in this last election. People know Malcolm's wealthy. And I still think it's an ad that will play well to the Labor base, Middle Australia and everyone else. Oh, yeah, they would say that, wouldn't they?
All right, look, a few other things. The company tax cut debate of itself. Look, it certainly doesn't look like the numbers are going to be there for this to get through, you know, barring a miracle, a Matthias Cormann miracle with the crossbench. But, Grahame, what needs to happen at that point if they are defeated this week? What should the government do then?
Well, Matthias got to walk on water and deliver lots of fish. Yeah, look, it's probably not going to get up. It's a hard argument because it's essentially, we all know that it's economically right. That, you know, the business is not stupid. No, they're not going to, the businesses that are here are not going to walk away from Australia. But people are not going to invest here. They're not going to do the research here. They're not going to put their headquarters here. They're not going to employ as many Australians here, and that's going to hurt us. You know, business is not silly. They will go where the best deal is. But by the look of it, the government will have tried hard, will be a couple of votes short. Then I'm not quite sure what happens. Do they persevere with it or walk away?
It's a tough one. Perhaps I don't have to rush into a decision on that, but yeah, look, there'll be various views within the government on it. But Bruce, what do you think about how difficult this is going to be leading up to those by-elections for the government, this particular policy?
The best thing that could happen to the government leading up to the by-elections is if this policy just floats away on an iceberg. You know, this is the worst possible outcome for them. You know, they can get away with aspects of the income tax changes that they've got through, but particularly to small business. But if this thing were, you know, by some miracle for Labor to get through, then that would be a godsend to it. There's no doubt about that in my mind. That would just go straight to the whole question about who's worthy and who's unworthy of getting tax relief in this country, and it would then go to the question about this Prime Minister being completely out of touch. So what benefit he may have gained from the tax package that he's got so far would be dissipated because Labor would just go straight in on this, as they will continue to do, I think, leading up to these by-elections anyway. But if Cormann was foolish enough to actually get the package through the Senate, and through the House, then I think there would be great wailing inside the Liberal Party caucus. They're not going to be very happy about that at all if that were to happen. So I think they'll just keep putting more and more demands on Pauline Hanson to come on board and make it much as unreasonable as they possibly can in order to make sure that she doesn't come on board. I'm sorry if I'm being cynical about it, but I think that's exactly what they're doing.
I'll tell you what the Liberal Party were very happy to focus on today. That was Anthony Albanese's speech on Friday night. Bruce, I'll get you to go first on this one. What did you make of that Whitlam-eration from Anthony Albanese? Nothing to see here, just completely on message with Bill Shorten, or something a bit more? I
guess you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. You know, I mean, it was the Whitlam-eration. It was it was an opportunity for somebody to talk about, you know, what they believe in personally and where their values are and have a bit of time for reflection. In doing that, of course, you're always going to draw the crabs from the other side. But I don't think for 1 second that the Labor Party's about to go around changing leaders, whatever happens in those by-elections. I've said that before and I'll say it again. I think it's going to be tough in seats like Longman, particularly, but I don't think that there's any real prospect of any change happening. So it's a beat-up by the government, and it's an understandable one, but does Labor really want to go down the horrendous path that we went through when Rudd was rolled and then Gillard was rolled? you know, that was what really lost us
all
the
right,
election.
Let me ask you this, you know, bluntly, Bruce. If Labor loses both Braddon and Longman, would they be better off sticking with Bill Shorten or going to Anthony Albanese?
Look, I think they'd be better off just staying where they are, because there'd be blood on the floor again, and we don't need that. That's why. That's one of the reasons why Turnbull's going so poorly. He's still a victim of the carping and the snapping at his heels by Abbott and his supporters. When a party looks divided, you're in big trouble, and that's what plagued Labor, and it's what will plague Turnbull right up to the next election. I don't think Labor's going to go down that path. I'd be very surprised if they did, because the price they'd pay would be too high, frankly, this close to an election.
Grahame, as a casual observer of the Labor leadership travails over many years, have they, you think, reached that higher ground that Bruce talks about, where they'd be better off avoiding any blood on the floor?
No, look. Anthony Albanese had to deliver a speech. That's fine. On content, he looked at it and said, look, what's the difference at the moment? What's the difference between the two parties and the polls? One is the party's doing well, and the other is leadership, we're not doing well. And what he actually did, he knows the door is still slightly ajar, and he wants to kick the door down, but he didn't. He just gave it a little nudge and saying, I'm still here, fellas.
And to that same question, if it all goes bad for Labor in these by-elections, what do you reckon might happen?
I think it'll be a very uncomfortable month for the leader, for Mr Shorten. It's never happened. And, you know, I used to be the federal by-election guru, and it's never happened. Well, 1920, but that doesn't count. That an opposition loses a seat to a government in a by-election. It doesn't happen. So there'd be a lot of people, real campaigners, who would be saying, we do have a problem. Is leadership the problem? They're probably not going to say, not yet. But the closer we get to December, you know, I think this personality politics is starting to count, perhaps more than it ever has. Where I used to think it was the party vote, I'm starting to think that maybe the leadership vote really does count a bit more than I used to think.
We're becoming more and more presidential. Yeah, sorry, Bruce.
But let's not lose sight of the fact that there was another poll today, a Fairfax Ipsos poll, which has Labor on 53, the government on 47. That's consistent with, you know, with a whole string of what's 30, how many it is now in a row that they've had.
34 news polls, yep.
I mean, it's a consistent number. And the interesting thing is, even though Turnbull is more popular and continues to be more popular than Shorten when it comes to preferred Prime Minister, which is not surprising when he's the opposition leader, some of those indicators are starting to look better for Bill as well. When they started drilling into some of the more, you know, some of the other questions around leadership and whether they're in touch with their own party and so forth. So I think you just got to look at the hard reality of the numbers that have been consistently repeated for many, many months now. You know, Labor doesn't need to panic about any of this. They just need to get on with the business of being a good opposition and pointing out, you know, the failures of the government. And I think Shorten's doing a pretty fair job at that. I think a lot of his policy settings are good.
That's half right, Bruce. But what that poll really said is the electorate doesn't trust the opposition leader. That is a problem.
Well, when you've got 53% of the vote, though, you know,
I don't trust him.
That's the bottom line.
There's something in it for everyone, shall we say, and plenty of polls we can analyse between now and the by-elections, I'm sure. Bruce, Grahame, we better go. Thank you both very much. We'll catch up next week.
See you, man.
All right, quick break. Back with the last word.